My name is Todd Gabler, Gabler.
You appear to be recovering from something.
Yes.
Would you mind just at a high level explaining?
On January 13th, I underwent a 5-level PCLF, that's a posterior cervical laminectomy and fusion. My neck has been fused together with titanium rods.
So are you taking any medication today that would affect your testimony?
I purposely did not take any pain medication today for the purpose of the clarity of my mind in my testimony to you today. I took Tylenol this morning.
What, sir, is your occupation?
I'm a licensed private investigator in the state of Utah.
How long have you been a private investigator?
34 years.
What, sir, is your investigative experience that is relevant to this case?
Well, over the course of 34 years, I have worked on approximately 100 homicide cases. I have been active in the trials of perhaps a dozen or maybe more homicide cases over the course of my career. I have extensive experience in a specialty in digital forensics, which allows me to examine digital devices, phones, computers, other things of a digital nature to uncover information that may have been deleted, destroyed, or altered. I can't really think of anything else that is sort of a 30,000-foot view of what would be important to the jurors in this case regarding my experience.
Well, sir, of those 100 or so homicide cases, how many have you worked for the defense?
All of them. I have always sat on that side of the room, standing in between the state and a defendant.
And you mentioned, sir, that you testified about 12 times. Have you ever testified for the state?
Never.
Did there come a time shortly after Eric Richins' death when the estate of Eric Richins hired you as an investigator?
Yes.
Do you recall about when?
I was first contacted by Crystal Bowman Carter, an attorney. I believe that would have been early to mid-March of 2022. She asked that I contact her client, Katie Richins-Benson, regarding the death of her brother, Eric. She gave me a broad sketch of what she knew about what had occurred regarding Eric's death. And it was a very short conversation, very professional, very to the point. And then it was a few more weeks before I first spoke with Katie and Clint. That's Katie Richins-Benson and Clint Benson at their home in Summit County. That was April the 1st, 2022.
And was that engagement to investigate the death of Eric Richins?
Well, that was part of the investigation. I was under the impression that I had been hired at the instance of the filing of a lawsuit by the defendant, in this case, against Katie for the trust money and the control over the trust that Eric Richins had created.
And to be clear, the lawsuit involved Katie Richins as trustee.
Correct.
And when you're interacting with Katie Richins, it is in her capacity as trustee.
Correct.
Or personal representative of Eric Richins' estate.
Correct.
What, if anything, sir, did you inform at that meeting with Clint and Katie What, if anything, did you inform them of how you conduct investigations?
Right. So I talked with him about some of the various facets of an investigation, how it would proceed. I've already talked to you about the qualifications that I have in digital forensics, and so I talked a little bit about that, about the need to get a hold of phones and computers and other things that would have evidence of either a wrongful death or some mismanagement of finances that was being alleged in the case. For all my clients, it's basically the same speech. You're hiring me to find the truth. The truth is sometimes very difficult for us to accept. I've often said that the truth is half what you most fear that it is, and half what you most desire it to be. And you cannot separate those two from the truth. I told them that they would have to accept the truth about what happened to their brother, no matter what that truth was. If he took his own life, they would have to accept that. If someone was responsible for his death, they would also have to respect my investigation and accept that truth. They agreed.
Sir, from that point forward, did you conduct an independent investigation?
I did.
Sir, who paid for that investigation?
I was paid by Clint Benson, but my understanding is that the legal sort of line of authority for which I was engaged was for the estate and Katie Richins-Benson as the personal representative.
Did you bill them at your customary rate?
I did. I continued to bill them at the rate that was established at the time of my engagement, even though my hourly rate increased during the course of my investigation. They enjoyed a lower rate essentially because of the time that they engaged me.
Did anyone else pay you for your investigation?
No.
Did anyone from the Summit County Sheriff's Office direct your investigation in any fashion?
No.
Did you conduct your investigation entirely independent of the Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Did you provide information from your investigation to the Sheriff's Office?
Yes, on many occasions.
And before providing it, did you receive approval from your client?
Yes, that is part of the standard operating procedure. It would be a crime for me to, under the Utah Private Investigators Regulation Act, to have any file materials go to anyone else but my client without my client's permission. So the standard course would be that I would discuss my findings with my client, and we would discuss handing that over to the sheriff's office. In every case, information that we thought important to the investigation was handed over, and there was no event, no occasion upon which we decided not to turn over something to the sheriff's office. Full disclosure. That was the rule.
Sir, was that flow of information one way from you to the sheriff's office?
Oh, yes, very much so. I initially tried to get the 911 audio call that the defendant in this case had made, and the sheriff's office denied my request under the Grandma law. I appealed to the county administrator for Summit County. She also denied my request. It's common for police agencies to be one-way streets.
So it was not uncommon for your request for information to be denied?
Correct. My investigation proceeded regardless of whether they were providing me any information or not.
Did you have contact with the Summit County Attorney's Office before Kouri Richins' arrest?
No.
Did anyone from the Summit County Attorney's Office direct your investigation in any fashion?
Never.
Did you conduct your investigation independent of the County Attorney's Office?
Yes.
On June the 15th, 2023, after Kouri Richins' arrest, did you receive a subpoena from the County Attorney's Office for your investigative file and any forensic data that you had collected?
I did.
Did you provide that material to the County Attorney's Office in response to that subpoena?
I did. I produced 2 hard drives. One contained what I call the logical and physical investigation file. That would be interviews, audio recordings, photographs, videos. That was a fairly large file. And then the second hard drive that I provided a few weeks later was all the computer forensics, the digital forensics, the examinations of the C&E computer, a clone of Eric's iPhone, and some other digital data.
Did you begin your investigation with a hypothesis?
Yes. A number of hypotheses appeared clear to me in this case. My investigations are hypothesis testing exercises. That's just a fancy way of talking about something that we all do every day. We look at a situation and we evaluate what that is. Is there evidence that supports our hypothesis that that is what it is? Well, if we're looking at a red light, our hypothesis may be that traffic should be stopped, and we look around for data to verify that hypothesis, that indeed there are cars that are stopped at that red light. In this case, it was clear to me that 2 hypotheses needed to be looked at. Number 1, Eric took his own life as a matter of accidental overdose. Number 2, Kouri Richins surreptitiously had Eric ingest a massive amount of fentanyl and killed him. So, as the case proceeds, and I see new data, I see phone data, I see computer data, I interview people, I look at documents or things or other devices. All of that data gets fed into one of those 2 hypotheses, both of those hypotheses. Does this confirm it? Does it deny it? Does this evidence make it more likely that this hypothesis is true or less likely that this hypothesis is true? Does this evidence preclude the possibility of one of the hypotheses being true? So that hypothesis testing continues throughout the investigation, and sometimes a permutation of the hypothesis comes along. We have to change the hypothesis just a little bit to allow some of the data to fit that hypothesis. Not large permutations in this case, pretty straightforward, 2 competing hypotheses.
Sir, you just mentioned that in testing your hypotheses, you conducted some interviews.
Yes.
What, sir, is your process for conducting interviews?
So my process is to always have a recording device active for any of my interviews whenever possible. This eliminates any possibility for me to be biased or unclear in my reporting of what was said during that interview. It also protects me in a liability scenario if someone were to allege that I had done something improper or had offered them material for their cooperation, anything like that. That would all be protection for me by recording that contact. So that is the primary objective of documenting an interview. Later on, when I report it, when I summarize that interview and in writing, because it's hard to get a lawyer to listen to an entire interview. There's some difficulty that they have with that. So they need a summary sheet about what the interview was about. And I type those up based upon the recording that I made, and I typed up those later, or I may have an agent type those for me from the recording, and then I'll review the report and sign off on it, and then it'll go into the file. So that would be my process with respect to an interview, all interviews.
Approximately how many interviews did you conduct in this investigation?
It depends upon your definition of an interview, I guess, but 45, probably, somewhere in that department. 40, I guess I could say 40 to 50 to be safe.
And in those interviews, did you identify yourself?
Oh, yes, always. There was no occasion in this case where I did not identify, give people my true identity and who I represented.
And did you record those interviews?
Yes. I think there were a couple of occasions where I could not get a recorder fast enough, but other than those couple of occasions, they were all recorded.
Who, for example, are some of the people that you interviewed?
I interviewed friends and associates of Eric's. I interviewed friends and associates of Kouri's. I interviewed a number of people involved in Eric's business and personal life. I interviewed family members, both the Richins family, and I attempted to interview family members of Kouri's family, but was not successful in gaining their cooperation for an interview. So that was generally who I interviewed.
And was the purpose to test your hypotheses?
Well, yes. I'm interested in getting those interviews done from as many people as I possibly can from both sides of the camp so that I can get the largest possible data set to feed into that hypothesis testing scenario.
Did you pass your interview recordings and written reports along to the sheriff's office?
I did.
Sir, as part of your hypothesis testing, did you analyze Kouri and Eric Richins' cell phone billing records?
I did.
How did you obtain the records?
Eric and Kouri's cell phones were being paid by C&E Stonemasonry. They were Verizon accounts, and I obtained the the billing records from C&E, from Allie Wright, with the authorization of Cody Wright. There were 2 productions of telephone records from C&E. The first one was for the period of January 2022 through May of 2022. The second production was May of 2022 through February of 2023.
In that January of 2022 onward time period, what types of information were you looking for in the billing records?
So because the billing records don't really offer content, that is to say it's not you don't get to see text messages or what the text message was, you do get to see the numbers that were connected to Kouri and Eric's phones. So we first of all decode that number to a name. We try and figure out who that is. And we fill in every instance where that number occurs with that name. And then we begin to count the total number of contacts with that phone number. So, for example, we would see the highest number of contacts for Kouri's phone to her mother. Not an unusual circumstance that someone would be close to their mother, and that would be the highest number of contacts on your phone. So that was the procedure that I was initially interested in. was the weight. We call that the weight. So what is the weight of that person on the other end of the line? Kouri's mom was a high weight because there was a high number of contacts. And so I'm interested in how many times you contact that person. Occasionally, I'm interested in what time of day you typically contact that person, and the type of contact, whether that contact is by text message only or by voice and text. That changes the character of the person on the other end of the line.
Sir, did you pass your analysis of contact weight along to the sheriff's office?
I did.
Was there any particular contact weight that caught your attention?
Yes.
What contact did that involve?
It involved the contact with Carmen Lauber. I noted immediately that there were many hundreds of text messages between the two from the initial data set. That was January of 22 through May of 22. There was a very heavy weight. I don't recall if she was the second or third weight, but it was very close. The only two people that I recall that were ahead of Carmen on that weight was Kouri's mom and Eric. So that was the one that stood out to me. There were others that I investigated, but that one was of particular interest to me.
And to be clear, that involved the weight of contacts between Kouri Richins and Carmen Lauber.
That is correct.
Did that contact weight cause you to investigate Carmen Lauber?
It did.
What did you determine?
Well, it was immediately apparent to me that Carmen had a very extensive criminal record involving drug use and potentially drug sales. I noted that Carmen had a dirty urinalysis, meaning that she tested positive for prohibited drugs in her drug court around the time of Eric's death. I was very concerned about the high number of contacts and the criminal history for Carmen, and I alerted the sheriff's office about that.
As part of your investigation, did you search the Richins home?
Yes.
When did you first search it?
I believe it was May the 8th of 2023. That was the day that it was released by the sheriff's office. It was an estate asset. Kouri's lawyer, two of her lawyers from Ray Quinney Nebeker, had showed up as soon as the sheriff's office had departed. And I had arranged for security to stand watch at the house after the sheriff's office released that. So I engaged in a conversation with counsel who wanted access to the home, and it was eventually agreed that one of the lawyers would accompany me on an inventory of the property, all of the assets in the house, all of the items in the house and the detached garage. And so that lawyer stayed for a couple of hours and then left. I never saw them during my search of the property again. I continued to search the property for 4 or 5 days, and then that was the end of my contact with the house initially.
And what was your process for searching and documenting your search of the Richins home? Right.
So GoPro video, chest mounted typically, sometimes mounted on the head, and a backup audio recorder just in case something happens to the camera. At least I've got an audio recording of what I'm talking about, where I'm at, what I'm looking at. So that is the procedure for documenting those. There's also photographs that are taken. They're also with respect to documents. I scanned with a scanner many thousands of pages of documents in this case from the detached garage office. So that was the general procedure for being at the house. There was at least one occasion that I can think of where I was called over to the house and I didn't have my camera with me, so my video camera. So I used the audio recorder and my camera on my cell phone to document things. I think that was in 2024. So with that being the only exception, that would be my process.
And was Clint Benson present at the home whenever you searched the home? And I guess by present, I mean in the home, not necessarily leaning over your shoulder.
That is not an easy question to answer because my focus was not on Clint Benson. My focus is on the things in front of me. I was never in that house without Clint Benson's authorization. I was never in that house without Clint Benson being on his way. So if he wasn't there when I got there, he was on his way there, and so he would join up later. It's possible during the May searches that Clint had left the house while I was documenting things in the house. I think that was particularly true of the detached garage office, where I was spending maybe 8 hours in a day just scanning documents, just feeding documents into a scanning device. So I think Clint was likely not there during that.
He was generally there?
He was generally there, I would say so, yes.
And you were recording with your GoPro the whole time?
Yes, with the exception I noted, yes.
Did you ever remove, well, other than your recording equipment, cameras, audio, GoPro, all of that,
Yeah.
did you ever bring anything into the home?
No, I did not.
Did you ever remove anything from the home?
Yes, I did.
What did you remove from the home?
So during my May searches of the house, and in particular in the detached garage office, I encountered a number of documents that had Ray Quinney Nebeker letterhead on the top, and they were either communications between Kouri and her lawyers, or they were billing records from her lawyers. That would be improper for me to read or possess. It would be unethical. I placed these documents into a manila envelope, and as I encountered more of them, I would simply grab a hold of them and put them into the manila envelope. And at the end of my May search, I took that envelope to the office of Ray Quinney Nebeker and handed it over. There were other things that I removed from the house. Sort of the general category of the kids, the boys' things. The boys had requested a few things. I believe Child Protective Services or someone at DCFS had requested that we get documents that pertain to the boys. And I believe there were some other documents that I removed that were personal documents that were now the property of Katie Richins-Benson. These documents involved vital records, birth records for Eric, other vital documents that we would generally safekeep for ourselves, and I turned those over to my client. I'm I'm trying to think if anything else was removed. Any item that I considered to be evidence was removed by the sheriff's office, not me.
So if you came upon something that you considered to be evidence, how did you handle it with the sheriff's office?
I don't think there was a standard approach. I only recall a few occasions. I think the first couple of occasions I may have contacted the sheriff's office directly, either Lieutenant Hemingway or I can't recall any others. And then on one occasion I contacted Travis, the investigator with your office, and then subsequently spoke to the sheriff's office about removing an item.
And is it your understanding that the sheriff's office would then get a warrant and come to the house to seize whatever item you thought might have evidentiary value?
Yes, I was there for one of those occasions.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.